I'm Heather Goodwin. Thank you for coming. Mind-body connection. How many of you have heard of this? Yeah, it's pretty popular, pretty mainstream, catchy phrase. So when we talk about the mind-body connection, I want you to think about a few things. You really, really do know what this is. But there's a lot of new science, and there's a lot of ways, techniques, and tools that are very accessible and easy that we can utilize on a daily basis to strengthen this mind-body connection, because truly and honestly, the mind-body connection, the research is showing us, is the essence and the cornerstone of health, physically and mentally. Think about if you've ever had a gut feeling. Had one of those? Yeah? Do you trust them? We should. Tracey's going to tell you why in just a little bit. Have you ever met someone that was a pain in the neck? Ever experienced a broken heart? Butterflies in your tummy? Yeah. So let's go with the butterflies in our tummy. There's a reason why that happens physiologically, and that is a mind-body connection relationship. What happens is that the butterflies are one of the many responses of the fight or flight experience. Fight or flight is what our body goes into when we experience stress or trauma, or if we get really, really nervous. And one of the things, we could do a whole hour on the fight or flight stress response, but one of the things that happens in the body is that the brain, the cranial brain, sends a message to the stomach to restrict its muscles. And we get a little tingle in there. And we call those butterflies in our stomach. Now, here's the interesting thing about mind and body connection. There can be a physical element, and there can be an emotional element, hence mind and body. And so when we go into that fight or flight, and the neurochemicals restrict our stomach like this, it could be from a perceived threat or a real threat. You could be thinking about that job interview you have tomorrow and literally get the butterflies in your tummy. You could go to the job interview tomorrow and get those same butterflies. And it's because the cells in your body don't know the difference. The same neurochemicals are released when we think a thought and experience an experience. Mind-body connection. So think butterflies in your tummy. We are all walking around, all of us, most of the time disconnected from that wonderful relationship between our mind and our body. Why? Because of stress. Stress, 80% of chronic illness is caused by stress. Let that sink in. 90% of doctor's visits are a result of stress. One 5-minute stressful episode can suppress your immune system for up to 5 hours. Does that make sense why 90% of doctor's visits are because of stress? Our immune system shut down. Stress can occur perceived or real. Think about the job interview example. Stress can be physical or emotional, which is why today Tracey and I are going to take turns talking about how to strengthen that mind-body connection, hence the antidote against stress, through physical means, Tracey's going to take that part, and emotional, mental means, and I'm going to take that part. Because it takes both, and they are a symbiotic relationship. The way I think affects my physical health. My physical health can affect the way that I feel mentally and emotionally, can't it? We've all experienced that. So stress. Stress, the beautiful thing about stress is that stress does not happen to us. You thought it did, didn't it? You thought that it was those emails, or the kids fighting, or that job interview. Stress does not happen to us. Stress happens in us. Think about an experience you had, and someone else had the same experience. Let's say a car wreck. Same person, another person's in the car with you. You develop post-traumatic stress disorder and need therapy for 3 years to get over this car wreck. And your friend goes to the chiropractor 3 times and is good as new. So that's that perception of stress that can truly manifest physically. So stress doesn't happen to us. Stress happens in us. Here's the good news. The good news is that there's a solution, and the answer is learning how to manage your stress response. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Physical tips for managing a stress response and mental emotional tips for managing stress response. Now let me just say kind of parenthetically about the physical, and Tracey's going to really expound on this. But what I mean by physical stress are things like toxicity in our environment, malnutrition. It doesn't mean you don't shop at Whole Foods and eat enough organic foods. It might just mean that your body isn't able to absorb and retain and benefit from the nutrients you're putting in it. That's what malnutrition is. And then toxicity, you know, the chemicals. We know all of that just living in Houston alone. All of those things cause inflammation, which causes stress on the body. We all think when we think of stress as more of that mental, emotional piece of stress, but there is a very real physical piece. And it's that inflammation, and that's why we have that 80% of doctor's visits, or 80% of chronic illness and 90% of doctor's visits. So stress does not happen to us. It happens in us. It's all about managing our stress response. How? You didn't know you had 3 brains, did you? So a lot of us have heard of the 2 brains. This is kind of new research that we've read, maybe a few articles about that, maybe read a book about it. The gut-brain axis. The latest and greatest research is saying that we in fact have 3 brains. This is your key to keeping that mind and body connected and robust. This is your, again, antidote against stress, is being able to cash in on what Tracey and I call the gut, heart, head axis. And there's a reason why I'm starting with gut. And when Tracey talks about her piece, she's going to start with the gut. And it's a really exciting piece, and this is where a lot of the research is just exploding. So with the gut, with the 3 brains, I want to tell you something powerful that if you're not convinced you have 3 brains, you will be after this statistic. 80% of our energy is utilized by these 3 organs. So everything else in your body only uses 20%. So 30% of your energy is used by your gut, 20% by your heart, 30% by your cranial brain. So these 3 brains are the key to our mental and physical health. And the exciting thing is that they talk to each other. And they talk to each other through a grand, powerful connector called the vagus nerve. Anyone heard of this? Mr. Vagus nerve is getting a lot of press these days. So the vagus nerve is the biggest nerve in your body. It has 2 branches, not just 1, 2 really thick branches, and it's rooted in your gut, rooted in your belly, and it goes up through every open organ in your body. It touches, the tentacles touch every organ in the body, so including the heart. And guess where it ends? The brain, what we call the brain, the cranial brain. It ends in the head. So vagus nerve is responsible for 80% of the communication between our 3 brains. And see which direction it goes? 80% of it flows upward, 20% goes down. So it does go both ways. Our brain tells our gut what to do, but who's in more control? Crazy, huh? Our gut tells our brain, is more in charge of our brain than our brain is of our gut. And Tracey is going to give you some really cutting-edge new research and some tips about how to start with that mind-body connection via the gut.
Thank you, Heather. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to start with the gut. And it's interesting, when we're in the womb, that's what forms first, the gut. So the gut forms, then the heart, then the brain. So we'll start with the gut. When we think about the gut, we think about the microbiome, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. It is the landscape of all this amazing bacteria and microbes that are that live in our gut and control 70% of our immune system. So in our gut, we have 70% of the immune system, 90% of our serotonin is actually produced in the gut, 90%. 50% of the dopamine in our bodies is produced in our gut. And over 40 other neurotransmitters are produced in our gut. And that information goes from the gut to the brain via the vagus nerve. So we definitely want to focus on keeping this healthy because it affects our mental well-being and the immune system part, our physical well-being. So how do we have this mind-gut disconnect? Or what causes that? Stress. Stress affects our nervous system greatly. So we have 2 sides of our nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system and we have our parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight part of our nervous system, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. We are typically in fight or flight, from the job interview to the kids fighting to the drive to work or the drive here to the heat. We've got this stress response going on all the time. It's a very important part of our nervous system that was there to give us energy to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, or now the perceived saber-toothed tiger, or now lift the car off of the toddler, or whatever we need it for. When we get into that stress mode, as Heather said, your body doesn't differentiate between emotional and physical stress. It just reacts. When we get into that stress mode, the 30% of energy that's supposed to be in our gut, digesting and rebuilding and creating nutrition for our bodies, is diverted away from the gut. When that happens, there's not enough oxygen flow to the gut, so the good microbes start to die off. Things start to go awry, and we get what's called dysbiosis in the gut. That's going to compromise our immune system. That's going to compromise our neurotransmitters, all those feel-good hormones that are produced in the gut and are supposed to be going up to the brain via the vagus nerve. So what can we do about that? We can feed the gut. So we have 10 times more gut bacteria and microbes inside of our intestines than we have cells in our bodies. So we have 100 trillion friends that we didn't even know about. So how do we feed them? There are 3 ways you want to keep this healthy, keep this microbiome healthy. The first way is to stop killing the good guys. So all of us know that when you take antibiotics, it kills the good guys, right? It's an antibiotic against life, antibacterial. They are necessary at times, and most of us have stopped taking them in the doses that we used to take them in, which is great news, except that we have antibiotics in our food supply. So every time we eat meat that isn't antibiotic-free, poultry, all kinds of animal products, dairy products that aren't organic or antibiotic-free, we are introducing antibiotics into our gut, and it's killing our good bacteria. So think about that when you're purchasing. You have a choice, and I know it's a lot more expensive, but that is a choice that we can make to help nourish or not kill the good guys. Another way that we kill the good guys is through chlorinated water. So think about that when you're pouring tap water. Chlorine is antibacterial, right? So we want it to kill the bacteria in the water, but we don't want it to kill the bacteria in our gut. So it's a good idea to get some kind of a filter, and I'm not going to get into types of water because it gets very complicated, but get the chlorine out, and that will help preserve that good bacteria in your gut. And a third thing we need to look at and eliminate are GMO foods. There's been a lot of talk about GMO foods, especially with legislation, but I want to just talk about one little aspect of it, and that aspect is the fact that when they genetically modify these foods, they introduce a chemical called glyphosate into the foods. Glyphosate inhibits or disrupts an enzymatic pathway in bugs, and that's how it kills the bugs. So that's protecting the plant, kills the bugs through this glyphosate. Great news, we don't have this enzymatic pathway, so it's not going to kill us in that way. But the bad news is our gut bacteria does. So when we eat genetically modified foods, we're actually using pesticides on the good bacteria in our gut. So organic foods are not allowed to be GMO, genetically modified, but a lot of things, there's a lot of talk about labeling genetically modified foods. Pay attention to where you get your foods, because most of the wheat, most of the corn, most of the soy are genetically modified in this country. So to keep your gut healthy, you need to make sure you think about what you're putting in. The second part is, first part is don't stop killing the good guys. The second part is don't feed the bad guys. Don't feed the bad guys. They live off of sugar and processed foods, so try to limit sugar and processed foods. And the third part is nourish your gut. So nourish your gut with probiotics via food. So you've got fermented foods like kefir and kimchi and yogurt. Make sure they have live cultures in them. Try to introduce those things into your diet. Sauerkraut's another good one. And take a probiotic. When you take a probiotic, it needs to be on an empty stomach, and take a multiple strain probiotic, because there are over 400 strains of bacteria residing in our gut, and cycle through them. So don't take the same probiotic for years, because it can disrupt the flora too. You're just introducing one kind. So try to get different variety of bacteria in the gut. And with that, I'm going to let Heather talk about a mindfulness technique that you can use to help nourish your gut.
Thank you. So back to our gut. Remember where the, can you guys hear me? Okay. Remember where the vagus nerve is rooted? In the gut. Okay, is it kind of coming together? Maybe why? The secret ingredient, the gut? Well, we need to feed the gut. The gut, remember, 80% of the communication goes this way. Another way to feed the gut is through our breath. Now, when we think mind and body, if, like Tracey said, 80 to 90% of our serotonin, heard of that neurotransmitter? Yeah, we know that one. That's the happy neurotransmitter. And 50% of our dopamine is produced down here. Dopamine is your reward, your motivation neurotransmitter. If it's produced down here and we're killing off the bacteria that supports that process, then that communication via the vagus nerve to tell our brain to be happy isn't going to be occurring. Another way, including the 3 tips that Tracey gave us, to get that good communication going to our brain so that we can feel good is through breath work, through belly breathing. If you know me, or have you ever been to our clinic before, you know that this is my gold standard. It's the easiest, cheapest, fastest way to balance your nervous system, to get the vagus nerve turned on, and to permanently rewire your brain. You heard me. Our brains are malleable. I'll talk a little bit later about neuroplasticity, but we can change our brain, and breath work is one powerful way to do that. So I'm going to very quickly, because I would be remiss if I didn't have us actually experience this. I want you to just check in with your body right now. You might notice if there's any tension anywhere. You might notice if you can even check in if there's any negative feelings. A lot of us feel those here. Some of us feel gut instinct here, broken heart. So just check in. And then if you would please, and you know what, before you do this, just watch me, and then I'm going to have you experience it. So with breath work, there's many different ways to practice breath work. My favorite is belly breathing. And with belly breathing, you want to really get the air down in the belly. Most of us, when we say, take a deep breath, we do this. My chest went out, my belly went in. Okay, that's stress breathing. So we want to do the opposite. We want to take air in through the nose, like you're smelling a flower deeply, and we want to allow the belly to inflate. That right there alone turns that vagus nerve on. Okay? Don't laugh. Tracey, come on. Get your mind out of the gutter. So the vagus nerve is now alive. It's sending all of those good messages up to the brain. Then you want to hold your breath for a moment. Okay? You still have that tummy engaged with air. And the reason why you want to hold your breath is because when we hold our breath, it sends a message to the cranial brain that something important is happening. Don't die. You know, you need to remember to breathe in a minute. So it really sends that message that we've activated even more profoundly. And then what you want to do is you want to expel the air through the mouth like you're blowing bubbles. And the reason why that's important is because when you blow a bubble, we all know the muscle memory of how important it is to go slow and steady when you blow a bubble, or else what? It's going to pop. It's almost magic when you have that tiny little wand and you go slow and steady that it's like magically keeps reappearing and you can make more and more and more bubbles. So that's the kind of breath that we want on the exhale. It also helps you pace. And the reason why pacing is important is because you want the inhale to be half the length of the exhale. And the reason why is because when we inhale, the two parts of our nervous system that Tracey alluded to, when we inhale, we very gently activate the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight, part of your autonomic nervous system. When you exhale, you gently stimulate and build and strengthen the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and renew. That's your let's get stress out of the body. Part of your autonomic nervous system is your parasympathetic. The vagus nerve is what do you think the vagus nerve is, which part of the nervous system? The parasympathetic. The vagus nerve is part of that. So when you exhale, you want to exhale double the amount of time as your inhale so that the exhale stimulates that sympathetic nervous system and builds those muscles so that we can combat stress over time and permanently rewire our nervous system, permanently be in a more coherent state. So it looks like this. Air in through the nose to about a count of 4. Belly is engaged. I'm going to hold to about a count of 7. Blow my bubbles. Until all of the air is out and the belly is flat, to about a count of 8. Double the ratio, so 4, 7, 8. Don't worry about counting. Just kind of get the rhythm going where the exhale's longer. So check back in with your body. Notice any tension. Notice if you have any somatic feelings where you're holding emotional memories. We store emotions in our cells, just like we store toxicity that's physical in our cells. So just notice. Don't judge it, just be aware. And then gently close your eyes. Just get all of the air out. And then on the next inhale, go in through the nose, please. Straight into the belly, and you might put your hand on the belly to see if it got bigger. Hold it. And gently blow those bubbles out of the mouth. See if the belly can get flat. And in through the nose. Big belly. Hold it. And out through the mouth. Flat belly. One more. In through the nose. Big belly. Hold it. And out through the mouth. Okay, gently open your eyes and check back in with yourself and see if you felt any shifts. Oftentimes, 3 to 4 belly breaths is all it takes to switch us out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, out of fight or flight, into rest or renew. That is the power of the mind-body connection. We're utilizing our gut, we're utilizing that vagus nerve, and we're sending a signal directly to the brain that all is calm, all is good, I'm in control. So don't forget to do your belly breathing. Gut breathing. So one of the things that I want to say, and you're going to hear me say this over and over in our short time together, if you don't remember anything else today, remember this. Stress doesn't happen to us. Where does it happen? In us. And the good news is it's all about learning how to manage our stress response. Eating right, doing your gut breathing. Now, one last thing, this is going to really make sense when Tracey starts to talk about the heart. Another way to remember this is that neurons that fire together wire together. Remember how I said that our bodies and our brains are malleable? We got 3 brains. Malleable means we can change them. We're not genetically predisposed. We have control over our genetic coding. Talk about that at the end. So we have control over our mental states and our physical states. And one of the ways that we do that is rewiring our hearts. And Tracey's going to talk about how truly, in fact, each of these 3 hearts has their own nervous system. John there.
Thank you, thank you. I love that belly breathing technique that she does. You just have to be careful, it's a little loud. And when you're in a quiet room, people will turn around and look at you. It's happened to me. The heart is more than just a pump. You know, we talk about the heart a lot. We talk about it in relationship to emotions. And of course, we have all experienced the ache of our hearts, but also the joy that we can get, the love, the immense love that we can get. But your heart has its own nervous system. It works independently of the brain. somebody can actually lose brain function and still be alive because their heart will still pump. It's a very amazing organ, and it's got 40,000 neurons in it. More information goes from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. Remember, via the vagus nerve. Amazing stuff. Your heart is actually 60 times, or has 60 times more electrical output than the brain does. 60 times. And 5,000 times more magnetic output than the brain. That explains why you're magnetically drawn to somebody, or repulsed, as the case may be, and you can't describe it. You know, you've already been, or a place. It can be a place. It doesn't have to be a person. But you're so drawn to it. You want to go back. You want to be there. But words can't describe it. It's that heart brain. Oops, I went the wrong way. Sorry. So how do we have this mind-heart disconnect? You know, we've all heard about high blood pressure from stress and all the things that can happen to your cardiovascular system, but one that I want to talk about today that I think is really important is the broken heart syndrome. The broken heart syndrome is something that we've probably all experienced, maybe not firsthand, but you've heard of it. It is the statistic, the fact that if somebody close to you dies, within the first 24 hours, that grief, that stress increases your risk of having a heart attack by 21 times in a 24-hour period. And it does not matter how healthy your heart is. It doesn't matter if you have no risk factors or you have tons of risk factors. 21 times greater chance of having a heart attack in that first 24 hours. And in the first week alone, you still have a 6 times greater chance of having a heart attack. So it's profound stuff. It shows you how much your emotions can affect your heart. So what can we do? We need to move. And I'm not just talking about exercise. Exercise is really, really important. But if you're sedentary all day long, exercise doesn't matter. So scientists have found you can have a 1 hour wonderful workout at the gym. If you go and sit in front of a computer for 8 hours, you've completely negated that 1 hour of workout. So if you're sitting all day long, doesn't matter. You know, I'm not saying not to exercise. I'm saying you need to exercise and move. So the guideline really is 20 minutes. So if you're sitting for 20 minutes, that's when things start to stagnate. So you want to start getting up about every 20 minutes and moving. They have watches now, Fitbit, and there are all kinds of things out there that will vibrate and remind you to do that. I just set my timer on my phone. And you want to get up for about a minute. So don't just stand up and sit down. You can get up for a minute. Get up and do the breathing exercises. Get up and drink a glass of water. I actually put a glass of water at the top of my stairs. I set my timer, 20 minutes, I'll go up, makes me move, go up to the top of the stairs, drink my water, and come back down. It takes about a minute, but it can make a big difference in your health. It's time for Heather. She's going to share another mindful technique.
So, second brain is our heart, 40,000 neurons, its own nervous system. Most of the information via the vagus nerve is going and talking to our cranial brain, telling it to release the good neurotransmitters, or telling it to wire for happiness or wire for sadness. Now, how can we purposefully, besides exercising and moving and standing up so that that blood flow can really move around the heart, how can we purposefully manipulate this wonderful, beautiful mind-body relationship through the emotional and mental techniques? Heart feeling. Now, heart feeling, if you've read the quote up there, I love that term, quantum nutrients. When we think about emotion, if you take the word apart, emotion is energy in motion. And it really, for me, that kind of that adage that emotion is energy in motion brings the reality that emotions literally carry a vibration. They carry an energy, which is why we feel that broken heart as well as physically experience the broken heart, because emotions have their own vibration, their own molecular spin. And like I said before, emotions can get stuck in the body, and they can become toxic, and they can make us ill. a lot of people know the whole idea that we store different emotions in different parts of the body. It's said that we store grief in our lungs. And if you think about, I can never remember her name, Superman's wife, Christopher Reeves. No, his real wife. Christopher Reeves' real wife, Dana Reeves. You remember what happened in their world? You know, she was the most doting wife. I mean, she was by his side that entire time, and when he finally passed on, do you remember what happened to her? Never smoked a cigarette in her life, and she died of lung cancer within, I think, something like a year. So grief. We carry grief in our lungs. And so emotion is energy in motion. So let's capitalize on that. And let's practice feeling positive emotions. Because remember, neurons that fire together wire together. And we want to wire ourselves for happiness and for joy and for gratitude and for love. Speaking of love, our hearts have more receptors for oxytocin than any other neurotransmitter. You know what oxytocin is? It's the love hormone. It's the love neurotransmitter. It's what's released when we have our babies or we're holding our babies, or for when we're on that honeymoon effect and we're in love, we're just replete with oxytocin swimming around in our body. So our heart is yearning. It's got all those receptors, meaning I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. Our heart is yearning to create and make and hold on to oxytocin. And it's why we hold our babies, whether we're right-handed or left-handed, cradled with their head in our left hand so that their heart's against our heart. And it's why when we hug people, we embrace heart to heart. Now, there's a reason for this. We are very, very smart beings. And there's a science called neurocardiology. It's a true science now. Neurocardiology, heart brain. Tracey alluded to the fact that sometimes you can kind of feel and sense, like some people make you feel really good, their energy makes you feel good, and some people make you feel kind of yucky or drained. That's neurocardiology in effect. Neurocardiology is that study of that 60 times of electrical energy that's released from our heart and that 5,000 times of magnetic energy that's released from our heart, that neurocardiologists have been able to actually measure it with very sensitive machines and see that that electrical and magnetic energy actually is outside of our body. So when we feel that yucky feeling around that person, we're literally feeling their heart magnetism and their heart electricity. There's 6 countries around the globe that are studying a thing called Global Coherence Initiative. And they're looking at, they're having people purposely do the kinds of techniques that Tracey and I are teaching you every day. And they're studying these people. And they're noticing that in these parts of the world that things are different. They're noticing that crime rates are different, that medical types of issues are different, hospital visits are different. They're even looking at the magnetic and electrical energy from the sun and the moon and the ocean, all of that. And they're noticing that the geomagnetic resonance in the earth corresponds with these people's heart. The magnetic electrical energy that they're the exact same hertz, the exact same kind of waves are being emitted. So it shows you the power that just by feeling good feelings, good emotions, that we have not just on each other, okay, because there's something real coming out of our heart, but on the world. And scientists are studying this, and it's profound. So how do I capitalize on that? Practice every day feeling good feelings. It's as simple as that. One of my very, very favorite authors is Rick Hansen, and his book is Hardwiring Happiness. And he talks about being able to stay in a space of good feelings. So let's pick gratitude, because we know that gratitude and appreciation is one of the highest vibrating emotions. And it brings instant feel-goodness to you. So gratitude and appreciation. He says that if you can feel in your body, not just think a thought, but feel in your body for between 10 to 20 seconds, several times a day, gratitude, that you will change your wiring toward more happiness and less sadness. Now let me explain this. We are hardwired for negativity. we have a negativity bias. It's not just you if you think it was just you, it's all of us. So we have a negativity bias, and Dr. Hansen calls this that we have a Teflon for remember Teflon's that nonstick pan? We have a Teflon for the positive experience, and we Velcro for the negative experience. So it's like the boss gives you your performance review, and it's perfect except for that one thing. What do you remember? The one thing. And so we Velcro onto the negative, and it's not because we're horrible people, it's because it's a survival mechanism. That our ancestors, if they worried about the saber-toothed tiger in the bushes, and so therefore they thought negative thoughts, there might be a tiger, there might be a tiger, there might be a tiger. The only thing they had to contend with was, well, they worried a lot, and that kind of sucks. But if they didn't worry about the tiger, and maybe there was actually a tiger in there, they'd die. So would you rather live with a lot of worry or not live? So we're hardwired for a negativity bias, to always look for the bad. And so the good news is that we can rewire our heart brain by practicing feeling good feelings. So I literally, and we're going to, at the end, we're going to actually put this in motion. But I literally, if I find myself in a negative space, I will literally say, I choose gratitude, I choose gratitude, I choose gratitude. I really don't feel it right now, but I choose gratitude, I choose gratitude. And I reach for a thought that brings me to a feeling. And I memorize that feeling, and that feeling now becomes part of my emotional memory. Make sense? So gut breathing, heart feeling. Remember, stress doesn't happen to us. Where does it happen? In us. And do we have control over that? Yes. It's all about managing your stress response, because neurons that fire together wire together. Third brain.
Thank you. Okay, the third brain. I bet you can't guess what it is. We used to think, for years, I was taught this, certainly growing up, that you can't change your brain. You may kill some brain cells along the way, on purpose and maybe not on purpose, but you can't change it. And science has now proven that this is completely wrong and invalid. Our brains are malleable. It's called neuroplasticity. We can increase gray matter in our brains. We can decrease gray matter in our brains. We can increase the output and production of neurotransmitters. We can decrease stress hormones. We have so much control on what goes on in our brains. We need to take advantage of that. Remember what Heather keeps saying, neurons that fire together wire together, and that's very, very true in the heart, in the head. So how do we get this mind, brain, cranial brain disconnect? Lots of things can cause it, but one of the ones that I'm very passionate about is dehydration. Our brains are 80% water, and I'll give you an example of how important that is in a minute, but whenever you have a headache, oftentimes it's because of dehydration, and the reason that happens is because as your body becomes dehydrated, your brain shrinks. We don't have pain receptors within the brain, per se, but we have them on our cranial bones and on the inside of our skull here, and the brain pulls away from the skull, and that causes the pain. That's where the headache comes from. So before you reach for your Tylenol or aspirin, try drinking a lot of water and hydrating, and it's surprising how much that improves the headache. Recently, there was a study done at the Tower of London. A group of researchers took some children, teenagers, and they did cognitive tests on them. Then they had them run around and exercise and have fun for 90 minutes without rehydrating, without putting any water back in. So they were sweating. Being London, they probably weren't sweating that much because it doesn't get that hot there, but they were sweating with no water intake. And then they did the cognitive tests at the end. When they compared these two tests from the beginning to the end, they found significant cognitive decline between the pre-dehydration and post-dehydration. So short-term memory was decreased, long-term memory was decreased, cognitive ability in general was decreased, their ability to do arithmetic was decreased, and problem solving, that's a big one, was decreased. Another thing that was significant about this is they measured the brains. And they found that with the 1.1% dehydration that these children suffered from, on average, 1.1% dehydration, there was a brain shrinkage equivalent to 1 year of aging. Just in 90 minutes, 1 year of aging, and 2.5 months of Alzheimer's disease. So pretty scary because we don't experience thirst until we're about 2 or 3% dehydrated. So we're all, unless we're being very, very cognizant about how much water we drink, we're all walking around usually dehydrated. And our children certainly are. So think about how that affects their abilities to work in school. So hydration is really, really important. And the good news is that brain shrinkage that showed up in the test is reversible, totally reversible, with proper hydration. So how do you do it? You have to hydrate your head with enough water. The rule of thumb is half of your body weight in ounces of water a day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you should be drinking around 75 ounces of water a day. But you have to adjust that. If you work out, typically 30 minutes of exercise means you need to add another cup to that. If you drink coffee or other dehydrating drinks like alcohol, you need to match what you drink with an additional cup of water. So if you hydrate your body, you're going to get nutrition into the cells and you're going to get waste out of the cells. It's really important for all the processes that go along in the body, and it really makes a difference in terms of how well you think, how you can focus your problem-solving abilities, and actually physically too, you start to lose coordination. So Heather is going to finish up with an amazing tool where we can bring together, from a mindful standpoint, the 3 brains, the gut brain, the heart brain, and the head brain. And I think you'll really like it. It's exciting.
All right, I love this quote. Take a read. Brain cells create ideas. Stress kills brain cells. Stress is not a good idea. How does that happen, though? And truly and honestly, it's real. It's true. In reality, again, it goes back to the vagus nerve. And it goes back to that fight or flight. What happens when we are stressed is that there is a neurochemical hormone actually released in our adrenal glands that sit on top of our kidney called cortisol. Heard of that one? It's also coined the stress hormone. Cortisol travels up to the brain to a special spot called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is one of the structures in the brain that's most responsible for memory. And guess what it does in there, that mean old cortisol? It kills memory cells. Stress makes us dumb. So when we're stressed, the cortisol goes up to that hippocampus. It also, Tracey was talking about the malleability of the brain, the fact that we have neuroplasticity, the ability for neural restructuring in our brain. Neural sculpting is kind of a term that we're seeing in a lot of the literature. Can actually increase stress and cortisol, gray matter, or decrease gray matter. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that's responsible for stress. And guess what cortisol does? It makes that amygdala really big and strong and increases the gray matter and all of those all of the neural activity that's going on in that amygdala. And guess what it does also? Then it goes up to our prefrontal cortex, which is the newest part of our brain. It's what is responsible for our executive functions. Anyone an executive in here? You important people? So what do executives do? What's one thing you might do in the course of your day? Solve problems. High five. They solve problems. They organize. They deal with conflict resolution. They build plans. Those are our executive functions in our brain. We want to be able to problem solve, don't we? Be able to resolve conflict, be able to organize, be able to regulate emotions. I'll bet another one of your jobs is to manage people and their interaction and all of those social nuances. So we're executives are very good at being able to regulate emotions and emotional environments. So we want that capacity, but again, when we are in fight or flight and when we are stressed and when our mind-body is disconnected, that cortisol is shutting down our executive functions. And we're literally losing gray matter there, and it's talking to our hippocampus and our amygdala. So what can we do about that besides hydrating. Well, we can deal with that mind-head connection also in an emotional, mental way, and that is to deal with our thoughts. Have any of you heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton? He's another one of my favorites. He says this. He says, cells aren't really controlled by genes. They're controlled by our perceptions of reality, controlled by our programs, our beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves, the memories that we don't really remember, but they're there in our subconscious. Dr. Bruce Lipton turned medicine on its head when he discovered, he was a stem cell biologist in a little lab in Stanford University, he discovered that genes in cells aren't predisposed forever and ever, that the environment actually can control the destiny of the gene in the cell. And the way that he discovered this is that he took two of the same cells and he put them in petri dishes. And he put one in a petri dish of some sort of medium, and a different liquid, a different medium, was holding this cell, exact same cells. Okay, let's call them, I don't even remember what it was, but let's call it a skin cell that he put in there. Went away, came back the next day. I'm making this up. I don't know how long he went away. But he came back. That skin cell in this petri dish turned to muscle. This stem cell in this petri dish turned to bone. So he took that, and now he is called the grandfather of epigenetics. Epi meaning what? Above genetics, like epidermis, above your skin. So above your dermis. Epigenetics. And the idea is that our emotions, our energy that's in motion, can affect us genetically at a cellular level. We kind of explored that already, right? But also our thoughts can affect us physically at a cellular level. We've all heard that. You know, some of us, you read stuff about law of attraction, the idea that what you pay attention to in life grows. Ever notice that? Bad things happen to negative people a lot. And then, the people that cups are always half full, good things always happen to them. There's a reason behind that. The idea that a thought can actually become a thing, that our perception oftentimes becomes our reality. So the lesson here in terms of keeping our mind and body, because these things that we think here affect us physically. Because remember, let's go back to that job interview. What happens? We get that butterfly in our tummy. What we didn't talk about, that's that stomach constricting, is that guess what else is happening when we think? We're just thinking about it. We're safe right here at Hope and Healing, but we're just thinking about it. And another thing that happens in the body is that cortisol gets released. And remember what it's doing to us physically? A lot of things that we don't really care to have happen in our cranial brain. So taking your thoughts and being aware of them is the practice. Notice how often, and it's not just you, remember we got a Velcro, we got that negativity bias, just notice it. Awareness is often about 80% of the work. If you can just be aware of a challenge, of an obstacle, of an attention that you might have, just notice it without judgment. There I went again, thinking that negative thought about myself. And then immediately replace that thought with a positive one. And if you have a hard time replacing it, it's oftentimes what you want to do is an exercise I do in my clinic with people is we look at what are the top 3 things that you think negatively about yourself or about your life. And then we come up with what I call replacement thoughts or replacement behaviors. And we literally practice, just like we would going to the gym or doing push-ups. We literally practice thinking those new thoughts. We catch ourselves, awareness is the hardest part, and then we replace it. And if you have a hard time coming up with a new thought, use a universal one, kind of like the gratitude feeling. So a universal one might be, I am abundant in all aspects of my life. Gosh, my air conditioning broke again. I am abundant in all aspects of my life. Whew, I feel gratitude. Link those together. It's even more powerful. Let that vagus nerve do its work. So that's your head thinking exercise. Notice your thoughts, change them. Your thought creates your reality, and it also affects your physiology. Stress doesn't happen to us. Where does it happen? In us. And the good news is it's all about just managing your stress response, because neurons that fire together wire together. I'm going to give you another funny adage that you can remember. When we talk about the cranial brain, another way to think about it is that our mental states create neural traits. Our mental states actually carve our neurology. They create neural states, neural traits. Mental states create neural traits. So if we allow ourselves to stay in the negative thought patterns, we literally will change our brain structure to be even that much more velcroed to the negativity. But we have the power through neuroplasticity and epigenetics to change the environment. And the environment here is the environment inside here, your thoughts. So if you think you're predisposed to be negative because your grandmother was negative and your great-grandmother was negative and your mom was negative, you can change that. The buck can stop right with you. All right, let's put this all together. We've got 3 brains in one body. We've got an axis that's 80% of our energy flows through. It starts in our gut. It flows through our vagus nerve, through our heart, through the vagus nerve, up to the brain and the head brain. We have 3 ways that we can actually mitigate the biggest reasons why these don't stay connected, which is what? Stress. And some of the ways that we can mitigate stress and keep that mind and body connected and keep our physical and mental health healthy are through good nutrition, through hydrating, and through moving. Through breath work, through changing our emotions, practicing heart feeling, noticing our thoughts and replacing them with positive thoughts, rewiring our brain for happiness. Those are just 6 ideas that are research-based that can transform your life. Now, this is where we're going to put it all together. This is the fun part. This is why you love coming to Hope and Healing. If you're comfortable, go ahead and put your folder down, whatever's in your lap. If not, you can just take some notes and mental notes and try this at home alone. And uncross your legs. If you're like me, I always have my legs crossed, but there's a reason why we uncross our legs. We have energy that flows through our body just like we have blood that flows through our body. And when we cross our legs, we block that energy. And take your hands, if you will, and however you're comfortable, rest them gently in your lap. I like to keep mine open and up toward the ceiling because that's a receiving gesture with your hands open like that. So I'm ready to receive all the goodness that's available to me. And then if you're comfortable, go ahead and let your eyes close. And start by noticing your body in this room. You're right here. Maybe you notice that you're a little hot. Maybe you notice that your feet are flat on the ground. See if you can notice your legs touching the seat. See if you can notice if you're holding any tension in your face. And loosen that tension. Let it go. Good. Now, practice that belly breathing. Very gently through your nose, take in air, and let that belly fill up big and fat with air. And hold it for a minute. And then through your mouth, gently blow, exhale, and let your belly flatten. And take air back in through your nose. Hold it. And let the air go through the mouth. And let the belly flatten. And in through the nose. Hold it. And out through the mouth. Let the belly flatten. Now keep breathing like this, please, on your own, and just listen to my voice. On your next inhale, I want you to imagine and visualize your gut area. And that's just around about where your navel is. And I want you, as you inhale deeply, to send a beautiful yellow light to that area of your body, to that very important microbiome, that gut. A yellow light like the sun. It's warm, it's grounding, almost as if that light is feeding all of those trillion little friends that are so important for our mental health, so important for our physical health. Let your gut shine brightly with that healing yellow light. And on the next exhale, activate your vagus nerve. Remember, it's sitting right there waiting in your gut area. And send white healing light to that vagus nerve. Imagine almost like a line going through your body, a white, bright telephone wire, if you will. So activate the vagus nerve on the next inhale. You see it, it's white. And on the next exhale, allow that white light to shoot up toward the heart. Now that vagus nerve has reached the heart, our second brain. And on the next inhale, send a beautiful green light to your heart space. See it light up right there inside your chest. Beautiful green, healing green, calming green. And see if you can gently feel what love feels like. And feel it in the heart. Is it warm? Does it tingle a bit in the heart? See if you can actually, on your next inhale, feel air entering into the heart space. The air we take in is cool. See if you can feel a gentle coolness on the next inhale going into your heart. The air that we exhale is warm. See on the next exhale if you can feel the air leaving the heart space. Feel what love feels like. Where do you feel love in your body? Hold on to that feeling and see now if you can intensify it ×2. Hold on to that feeling. Memorize it. You are putting it in your emotional memory. You are replacing toxic emotions that are stored in our body. Take a deep inhale. And on the next exhale, wake that vagus nerve back up and let that white light travel from the heart space through the vagus nerve to the brain stem. That's the very back of your head, right where the spinal cord stops and the brain begins, the head brain. And as your vagus nerve, your healing white light, finds your head brain, send a bright blue, almost an indigo light to your entire head brain and light it up. And on the next exhale, I want you to think to yourself, I am abundant in all aspects of my life. And I want you to think of at least 5 places in your life where you are abundant. And think about all the details. See it, taste it, feel it. Intensify the thought ×2. Send love to each of those thoughts. Gratitude for that thought of abundance. You are rewiring your brain for happiness. You're releasing all the feel-good neurotransmitters. You're capitalizing on a healthy mind-body connection. Now step outside your body and look down at yourself and see if you can see your 3 brains. See if you can see your beautiful yellow gut area lit up, your green heart, the blue head brain, and the white light, masterfully connecting all of them together, that vagus nerve. And let the vagus nerve travel all the way to the very tip top of your head, to the crown, and let it leave your head. And let that white light reach up out of this room, out of the building, into the sky, and allow yourself to be connected with God, with the universe, with the ever higher power you believe. And let God send that white light, and now it's 10 times stronger, back down through your crown, healing that head brain, back down through that vagus nerve, 10 times stronger into that heart space, and ending back down in your microbiome, into your gut brain. Vibrantly healthy, vibrantly happy, vibrantly safe, vibrantly abundant. And keep your eyes closed and wiggle your toes. Wiggle your fingers. Come back to the room. Notice again your feet on the floor. Notice your legs in the chair. Notice your face muscles. And when you're ready, gently let your eyes open. No one snored. Awesome. So, to wake us back up, with a colleague of mine, I wrote a curriculum for schools, a mindfulness curriculum for schools that we're piloting in one of the HISD elementaries. And my 5-year-old at that time son saw the PowerPoint, and he saw this cartoon. And I said, so which one, Nicholas, which one looks better? If you were to be the man or the dog, which one do you think would feel better? He says, Mommy, I want to be like the dog. So Tracey and I always joke, please remember, be like the dog. And we will end and then take questions with a wonderful quote. And I congratulate you for doing this. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow has yet to come. We have only today. Let us begin. So give yourself a round of applause for showing up today.